Hello students, my name is Moon and this is He200, also known as the EMT program here at Queensborough Community College, and this is Chapter 21, Toxicology, or that's what it said on the schedule, but here on the chapter screen it says poisoning and overdose, and that's what EMTs think of when they hear the word toxicology. So, a poison is anything that can harm the body, but usually it implies that it's ingested, so through the mouth, nose, or skin, or eyes, or anywhere it is absorbed into the body instead of like forcibly introduced, which is trauma. These are the things that can cause poison, and again, anything that can be absorbed into the body through any one of various ways. Medications can be a poison depending on the dose. In fact, the only difference between a medication and a poison is how much is used. If you use just the right amount, it's a medication. If you use too much, it becomes a poison. So please follow the directions. Not only the directions of prescribed medications, but also over-the-counter medications, herbal remedies that you get from the health food store. Always follow the directions. It's the old joke among Americans that if it's the American way, it's the American philosophy that if a little bit is good, then too much must be better. No, with medications, with drugs, too much is bad. If a little bit is good, too much is bad. The effects of the poison, well, it depends on what the poison is. Can cause all kinds of things depending on what the poison is. Okay, so this is how it's entered into the body. It's called route or route. How to pronounce it depends on who your instructor was, who your teacher was. So I've heard both routes and routes. So as long as it's in context, I know what it's like. So usually it's associated with ingestion, but if you smoke or vape, then that's inhalation. Toxic gases. If it gets on the skin, that's absorbed, and then if it's introduced through a hole in the skin, that's injected, right? Of course, your ambulance agency should be child-proofed. Your ambulance should be child-proofed, and anybody's home should be child-proofed too. Let's see. In other EMT agencies outside of New York City, EMTs are sometimes called to do community outreach. So here in New York, in the boroughs of New York City, we've got somebody else to do this. Public health, doctors, nurses, they take care, this is their turf. But if you become an EMT all the way up north, further up north, New York, then the availability of healthcare professionals gets spread a little thin. You could be asked to come into school one day and give a presentation, and then you better know what you're talking about. So here's pictures of some things that could be a poison. Again, it's the amount, really. For a children can get poisoned because they don't know what they're doing. Adults can know what they're doing but get poisoned anyway because it's an accident or they did it on purpose. Either a serious attempt at suicide or just an attempt to call for help. But either way, they put something harmful in their bodies, and now you are there. Okay, so when you are there, you do the scene size up and you do the primary, and then in the secondary, once you've confirmed in the primary that they're not going to die like right in front of you, you have managed the airway, breathing, and circulation. Now you start playing detective and you figure out what did they take, when did it happen, how much did they take, how it got into their body, and how long ago. So this is how long did the ingestion occur, but then in the previous slide it said when did it occur. Doesn't that mean the same thing? No, when did it occur is like when did it start, and then how long is like the progression. And also with this time was like, is this the first time it happened, or have you been taking it before, like a recurring prescription drug, or is this chronic abuse? So, with illegal drugs, the patient will understandably be hesitant to answer anything truthfully, especially because there you are with uniform and flashing lights can be seen through the window. So they're wondering, are you going to rat them out? Are you going to narc them out to police? So when I suspect an illegal or recreational drug was used, one of the things I say early is I put on my best bureaucratic face, a nerdy face, and say, everything we share between ourselves is confidential. I will only share it with the doctor who needs to know these things. And then I'll ask, are you taking anything else? And I say, I'll even spell it out, like, anything you about to tell me, I will not share with the police. It's none of their business. It's patient confidentiality. This bureaucratic persona I put on works for me because I look like a nerd. So that's my technique. That's my style. It may not work for you. You may need to put on some other kind of persona that is convincing from where you are. So find the way that works for you to get the patient to open up. So the previous two slides can be summarized by who, what, where, when, how, why, and make sure you ask all of these things. Okay, what have they done? So this is the I in OPQ or STI. Remember, why are they calling you? Not because they took something poisonous, but they took something and now they feel bad. Bad enough that they call 911, right? So, onset. What are you feeling? Well, chief complaint, what are you feeling? Onset, when did you start feeling this? It doesn't have to be pain. In fact, if they are not feeling pain, don't ever mention pain again, because you will lose credibility. You will prove, if you keep asking about pain and they tell you I'm not in pain, you will lose credibility and they will think you're not listening, because you're not. Instead, you should listen. Whatever words they use, repeat it back to them. Let's say if they feel weak, really weak, and like they're going to throw up. So ask them, onset, when did you start feeling this weakness and nausea? Provoke palliative, does anything make this feel better or worse? Radiate, tell me, where do you feel the weakness the most? Because that's not, it sounds obvious to you, but you'd be surprised how they answer. So always ask the radiation question by saying, tell me, where do you feel this problem the worst? And then quality, in your own words, tell me what the weakness feels like or the nausea feels like. And if they say, what do you mean, what does a nausea feel like? I feel like I'm going to upchuck. Is that good enough for you? Just take the words, what they say, write it down. So you can use the OPQ or STI, just change the word pain into something that's relevant and that proves that you're paying attention. So, intervention, anything you did that try to make you feel better. And some people try to make themselves throw up. Maybe they weren't feeling nauseous, but now they think maybe it's a home remedy, their grandmother always did it. But one of the ways that can make people throw up is syrup of ipecac. A more traditional home remedy is like castor oil, something like that. But we don't do that anymore. So that's something that the patient may have done, and that's definitely worth knowing, but we don't use this anymore. Oh, you want to know how much they weigh. Why? Because many of these poisons spread throughout the body. So if it's a bigger body, then they need a larger amount of poison to have the same effect. So knowing how much they weigh, always a good question to ask, no matter what the chief complaint is. But depending on the kind of chief complaint, you want to ask this earlier or later. So with a poisoning, you definitely want to ask this earlier. So, and then ask them, the S in sample stands for other signs and symptoms. So ask, like, is there anything else bothering you? Chemical burns around the mouth, this is not really a question, it's a observation, right? So this is part of the physical exam. This is a physical exam. This is a symptom. This is a symptom. This is a sign. So you know the different signs and symptoms. You know, refresh your memory. What's the different signs and symptoms? Okay. Food poisoning. Okay, so depending on how soon it happened, there's a little trick in medical school to know whether it's a whether it's a bacterial food poisoning or a toxin poisoning in the food. But don't worry about it. Just ask them like how long it took for you to feel this way. If they're sure it was because of something they ate, then ask how long ago did you eat, what did you eat, and how long ago did you eat this. Activated charcoal is something in New York State, but it's not available on the New York City ambulance. But since you're going to take a New York State written exam, you really should know about activated charcoal. So don't blow off this section of your textbook. Make sure you read it too. And the idea of activated charcoal is that when they drink it, it sits in their stomach and absorbs the poison. So when the activated charcoal holds on to the poison, and the poison doesn't get a chance to be absorbed into the body. How does the activated charcoal know to absorb the poison? Well, it doesn't. It absorbs everything. But so it's absorbing your stomach juices too, but you're always making more stomach juices. But hopefully the patient has not been ingesting any more poison ever since they called 911. So as it absorbs some of the poison, hopefully the total amount of poison absorbed by the body is going down. Both activated charcoal and syrup of ipecac both can cause vomiting in the patient. I've never tasted it, but I've heard drinking activated charcoal is like drinking cigarette ashtray tea, but very concentrated. So it's about as disgusting as it sounds, and it can induce vomiting too. The reason why we don't do either of these in EMS anymore is because we just don't like our patients throwing up in an uncontrolled manner. We have MSS bags for if they do want to throw up, but at least we didn't cause it. If we gave them activated charcoal, then we may cause it. And so that's probably why it's not in New York City anymore. In New York State, they do have it on the ambulance, but you have to call medical control for permission to use it. The reason why is that upstate New York, they could be an hour from the hospital, and so but in New York City, you're 15 minutes from the hospital. So you just take them to the hospital here in New York City, and then they'll get their stomach pumped in the emergency room. But if you're an hour from the hospital, then the medical control may give you permission, order you to give some activated charcoal so it prevents the body from absorbing that poison. But when you make that decision, though, be aware that once you give that activated charcoal, the patient may throw it all up. So you want to, first of all, BSI in safety, keep yourself out of the direct line of the vomit as it comes out, wear gloves. You probably want to put on that plastic gown. And I've never used it, but what I've heard about activated charcoal is that it is permanently staining. So if you get any of it on your uniform, it is not coming out. You basically have to buy a whole new uniform. You will not get it out. Dry cleaning, laundromat, none of that works. It's permanently stained. Okay, dilution. Okay, you should know this to answer the question, but don't ever do it in your ambulance. In fact, it's really discouraged in this New York State in general. But when in doubt, don't. Don't make the patient ingest anything for any reason in your ambulance. Well, don't make them ingest any fluids when they are under your care. When in doubt, don't. Yeah, I know. We sometimes help them take aspirin or nitroglycerin, but without water. Well, the one exception is if they are having a diabetic emergency, you know or suspect that it's hypoglycemia, and they are alert and oriented and can maintain their own airway. Then you tell them go drink a bottle of orange juice, because that's really what they need. But any other than that, do not make your patient drink fluids for any other reason. Okay, naloxone is given for opioid overdose. And how do you know the patient is having an opioid overdose? Because they stopped breathing. They are not breathing adequately. That is in the primary. So what do? You give BVM. And then in the secondary, you ask what happened. And you find out that they were at a party and they were taking all kinds of drugs, and nobody knows what they took. Or they took one of everything. Or you find this patient lying on the street, and they've got needle track marks because they may have injected an opioid. Or you find them lying in bed and a bottle of Percocet is next to them. So these are all suspicions of opioid poisoning and overdose. So you give the Narcan, the naloxone. Something you need to know about this Narcan. This is the EMS version. This is the commercial public version. Something you need to know about Narcan is that it lasts about 30 minutes.
Alright, so in this video we're going to be talking about Narcan administration. So the thing that we're concerned about with opioid overdoses is we can administer.
He's giving a lot of setup. Here's the Narcan, what it looks like. When you take it out of the box, it looks like this. He's putting it together, and then this is what it looks like when it's fully assembled. And then the patient needs to be supine so you can squirt it in their nose. If the patient is sitting up, then it's gonna dribble right out. So the patient needs to be supine, and you squirt the thing in there. So how much do you give? Well, the vial is 2 milliliters. So you give 1 milliliter in each nostril. So half in one nostril, half in the other. Don't worry about being exactly 1 milliliter. It's going into the same head. So just approximately half in one nostril, half in the other. And the reason why is there's a chance that maybe one of the nostrils is completely blocked, and the half that you put in that nostril is completely wasted or useless. So you want to give this patient at least a half and half shot. Most of the time they'll absorb the whole thing. The Narcan only lasts for about 30 minutes. The opioid they ingested into their body lasts hours. So the thing is, you give the Narcan and then they start breathing again, great. And then a few minutes later, they wake up and ask your skills instructor on Saturday, have they ever given Narcan to an opioid addict? What did they do when they woke up? But then, if this is like an actual opioid addict, like a Percocet fentanyl addict, they're going to realize what's happening, and they're going to try to RMA. They're going to try to get out of there, because what they want to do is run off to a place to hide so nobody will ever discover them. Wait for 30 minutes, the Narcan will wear off, and then they'll go back into their opioid high. But why were we there? We were there because they weren't breathing. So, but they don't care. They are so addicted, they need the high. And so finally the Narcan wears off, they go back into their opioid stupor, and then they stop breathing, and they really do die this time. Oh, I said there's no breathing, but what's the other famous symptom to finally confirm opioid overdose? Yes, I know respiratory depression, but lots of things cause respiratory depression. What's that other physical sign? You know what? I'm not going to tell you. Ask your friends, ask your classmates, ask your skills instructors. What is that famous physical sign? It's in your textbook. So you're dying to know, go read the textbook. And if for some reason it's against your philosophy to read the textbook, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what makes you think you can be an EMT and take good care of your patients if you refuse to read the textbook. So go read the textbook. What is that physical sign other than respiratory failure that is a big giveaway that this is an opioid overdose? Okay, any other poisoning, find out as much as you can. This guy, is he holding a textbook? It's the first time I'm noticing it after all these years of looking at this picture. I don't know. Find out as much as you can. Read their medication vials. The only thing missing from this picture is the laptop for her to enter this information in. When in doubt, just bring it. Bring the whole thing. Like, ask the family to put it all in a bag and bring it to the hospital, because your laptop, your PCR, lets you enter the name of the drug, but there's so much more information on that vial that can be very useful. So is my mouse showing? There's so much information on this vial that can be very relevant and useful to the doctors in the ER. So when possible, bring the whole thing. All right, I need to mention this now. In our internet age, our cell phone age, you may be tempted to take photos of each vial to save the trip and blah, blah, etc., etc. Here's a problem. Massive HIPAA violation to put this information on your phone. Maybe your agency has issued you the company cell phone, and you may feel like, why don't I just take a picture with the company cell phone? Verify with your supervisor or dispatch if you're allowed to do that. They may say, no, don't do it. Then you can't do it. So if you cannot bring it, then you're just going to have to write it down. You're just going to have to type that all in. I think she's calling up. She's called medical direction on scene or en route to the hospital. You want to call medical control if you need guidance on what to do. Here's that activated charcoal working its way up the straw. You see how black it is? So, yeah, so if I were her, I would wear a plastic gown, because it could come right out and it's going to splatter. I don't know where they got the cup from. We don't carry cups on the ambulance. Maybe the cup came with a activated charcoal kit. Here's an emesis bag. Yeah, so have an emesis bag ready in case she wants to vomit. Okay, so children, very much real risk of poisoning. Be ready to manage the airway breathing circulation. Get as much information from the caretaker as you can. Oh yeah, so there are household cleaners that look like something tasty and juice and delicious, and the one that I think they're talking about is Fabuloso cleaner. Yeah, doesn't this look like Gatorade or fruit juice or something? So imagine this is sitting in your cabinet, and then a 3-year-old, 4-year-old gets in there and says, "Ooh, tasty," and then drinks it, right? So this is they're drinking detergent. I think it's a terrible marketing idea. Okay, I don't know why they haven't been sued yet. Some kids can get into their parents' medications and think these are candies, because some of them get the Flintstone chewable vitamins and it's tasty, sweet. So they think all medications are tasty sweet. Okay, inhaled poisons. So ammonia, chlorine gas can be gotten from cleaning supplies, workplace accidents, agriculture chemicals. Well, when are we going to have agriculture or pesticide inhalation here in New York City? How about Home Depot? Home Depot in the gardening section. In fact, when you're called to Home Depot as a 911 call, it could be very much this. It could be that a customer or staff person accidentally dropped a bottle of pesticide and it's spilled open and now it's contaminating everybody. But if that's the case, what should you really do on the way there? Before you get there, you should call for hazmat. You should call for additional resources. Carbon dioxide is what everybody exhales, but there are some industrial situations where concentrations of it are. And, the top one, carbon monoxide, has its own slides, has its own several slides. So scene safety, absolutely. If it's inhaled, then you can inhale it. You may want to call for additional resources like hazmat. So see, we don't have this stuff, the scuba gear, self-contained underwater breathing apparatus, scuba. So let the people who do have this stuff get the patient out. And so that's the difference between hot zone, warm zone, and cold zone. You always stay in the cold zone. Inhaled poisons, okay, so very much a respiratory system impairment, and then these all make sense. Again, who, what, where, when, how, why. Find out all this information that you can. You don't move them out of that environment. Hazmat takes them out, and hazmat this time could be simple as firefighters. So absolutely, you want to get firefighters to be there on scene with you. And if they're not there yet, then don't go inside. It's really that simple. If bystanders and family are yelling at you to go inside, it's like, no, scene not safe. Absolutely, start them on the oxygen right away. Get all the information you can. Bring containers with you as long as it's safe. You don't want to contaminate the emergency room, open up a toxic gas into the emergency room, right? So get as much information as you can, and then okay, so carbon monoxide. Carbon monoxide is generated by combustion. What's combustion? When oxygen and some kind of flammable material like gasoline, plastics, wood, anything that can be combusted mixes with oxygen, and an ignition source will generate heat, which is why we set it on fire in the first place. But it also generates carbon monoxide. And guess what? The heaters, the boilers, the heaters in the basement, they also generate carbon monoxide. However, as a result, the boilers and heaters in everybody's basement must have a ventilation shaft to the outside. But what if through age or disuse or poor maintenance, there's a crack in the ventilation shaft, and so it leaks into the basement and then slowly works their way up the stairs into the main room, right? So that could be a cause of carbon monoxide. If your fireplace is not vented properly, motors like car engines, warehouses, they're supposed to be ventilated. In the winter, a portable heater in the winter, common combination that causes carbon monoxide poisoning and death. And that's what you'll run into a lot in New York City. During the winter, especially in the buildings that have poor heat generation, then people will buy their own portable heaters, kerosene heaters, butane heaters, and they will set it up in their living room and turn it on. But then, and you may have done it, I remember my parents doing it when we lived in here in New York a long time ago. So what's up? How come I'm still alive today? Because it was ventilated. My parents read the instructions and ventilated. The instructions say only use in a well-ventilated room, which creates a dilemma now for people who bought it out of necessity. It's effing freezing outside. They got the heater to, stay alive. And then the instructions say ventilate the room, and they may think, are you crazy? It's freezing outside. Why am I going to open a window, let the cold air in, when I just bought this thing to keep my room warm? So they don't open the window, and the room fills with carbon monoxide. The symptoms of carbon monoxide: headache. These are late signs. But before that, there is weakness, fatigue. This deserves to be here. And then, let me put a gap here. Okay, so these are early signs and these are late signs. The early signs: if you are feeling only this, and you came home after a long day at work, the boss is a jerk, the customers are stupid, your coworkers are backstabbers, nobody appreciates you, you're tired, you're hungry, and you feel headache, weakness, fatigue, and dizziness, are you going to think, oh my God, I have a carbon monoxide leak? Or are you going to think, it's been a long day, I'm going to go to bed early and I'll feel better in the morning? This is what people do. But what happens is, while they're sleeping, they start to feel this. And by the time they get to altered mental status, they don't realize that this is not good. And so they don't call 911, they don't escape out of that scene, and then they finally die. So how do you know otherwise that there's been a carbon monoxide poisoning in your room? You don't. Carbon monoxide has no color, no odor, no taste, no feel. There's no way for you to detect carbon monoxide. The only way to definitively know is to have a carbon monoxide monitor. Firefighter, that you'll see them wearing this yellow brick on their belt somewhere, that's a carbon monoxide monitor. Oh, and he has one too. It's a little more, it's a different model. And for an actual fire, then they have a more sophisticated, dedicated device. So that's how you know, with a carbon monoxide detector. And all homes, all people should have one for their own house, preferably over the kitchen and at the basement, anywhere else that there may be combustion. What do you do for somebody with carbon monoxide? Well, this goes to the mechanism of action of carbon monoxide. Carbon monoxide displaces oxygen from the red blood cell. The red blood cell is supposed to carry oxygen from the lungs to the cells all over the body. But carbon monoxide locks onto the hemoglobin better than oxygen does. So the answer then to this process is to overwhelm the system with oxygen, so that as the random carbon monoxide molecule drops out of the hemoglobin, it's quickly filled, that space is quickly filled by an oxygen molecule. It's like musical chairs. Have you guys ever played musical chairs? Musical chairs. So every once in a while, a carbon monoxide. So imagine all the chairs get filled up with carbon monoxide, and so the patient is dying. But then you fill that space with a gigantic crowd of oxygen, And then every time one carbon monoxide molecule gets up to, like, I don't know, go to the bathroom or to get something from the food table, the chair is immediately filled by another oxygen molecule instead. And so slowly, the carbon monoxide is taken out of the body. But it's a very slow process. It's not going to fix it in the short time you have with the patient. Instead, you take him to the hospital that can do it for real. And it's not just any hospital now. It's a hospital with a hyperbaric chamber. They slide the patient in here, shut the door, and then overpressurize. Hyperbaric, too much pressure. They overpressurize the chamber with oxygen, and that will help also. That will speed up the replacement of carbon monoxide with the oxygen. The hyperbaric chamber, by the way, is also great for people with the bends, like divers who came up to the surface too fast, and then they get the bends. So because it's high pressure at the bottom of the ocean or the bottom of the sea, and they came up too fast. So what do you do for this patient? Well, you put him back under pressure in a hyperbaric chamber. Right, so carbon monoxide is just one of the bad things coming from smoke when they inhale smoke, like if they're trapped in a burning building, and there's like all kinds of other things. Cyanide, yes. What do you do for cyanide? You have a weapons of mass destruction kit. EMT WMD kit. When you well, I didn't expect this to come up. Weapons of mass destruction kit. Tupam atropine kit. So anyway, as an EMT in New York, when you begin your shift, you have to go through the ambulance and check that all the equipment is there. You go through a checklist, and one of them is a WMD kit. It's a red heavy-duty bag with a plastic lock and a serial number. At the beginning of your shift, you verify the lock is intact, the bag is closed, and you write down that serial number, thereby swearing under oath that you have verified the kit is intact. At the end of your shift, you write that number again, swearing again that you did not open the bag and the lock is still intact. And that's pretty much it. One day, you may, under medical control orders, be told to open that kit and use it, and this is what it'll contain. And one of them will be a antidote to cyanide. We'll talk about what's actually in the bag I think it's the last lecture of the semester with hazardous materials, also known as terrorism. I'm gonna check the lecture list. Oh, not that list. Let's check this list. November 25, multiple casualty incidents, hazardous materials awareness. And there'll be the terrorism lecture in here too. So yes, the last lecture of the semester before the final exam. We'll talk about who is giving that lecture? Is it on a Monday? Monday, I'm giving the lecture, so I will tell you about what's in that bag. And by then, I will have found a picture of the bag. Okay, if you you are called to an MCI, mass casualty incident, and in New York City, the most common MCI is a fire. So you arrive at the staging area, and you walk over to the incident commander. What's an incident commander? You should know that. You were told to do the IS 100, 200, 500, and they will explain to you what the incident commander is. The FEMA online certificates. You go find the incident commander, and they say, BLS, good, wait over there. And he points somewhere, and you go stand over there. And then you stand there, and you watch the pretty lights and the shiny lights, and you see the firefighters in action. And then suddenly, your radio comes on and says, patient, coming out with a patient, need BLS. And they bring out the BLS. They bring out the patient to the cold zone. And you're on. That's your patient. You go assess this patient, take care of them. They most likely have smoke inhalation. The two signs of real concern is not the burns on their skin, but the burns in their throat. The burns on the skin is really, really bad, but the burns in their throat is life-threatening, like immediately life-threatening. How do you know they are burnt in their throat or in their airway? If they're burnt in the mouth, then they're probably burnt in their throat. If the air that they inhaled was hot enough to burn their mouth, it probably means it was hot enough to burn their throat. If the air that they inhaled was hot enough to burn their nose hairs, it was probably hot enough to burn their throat. What do? Assess breathing. If they need BVM, give BVM. You may have to, once you have suspected airway burns, you definitely want to hand this off to paramedics. When I say hand it off, it doesn't mean you're no longer with a patient. The paramedics will join you, and they will do their paramedic thing, and you keep on doing your EMT thing, which is BVM, OPA. Now you while they're treating the airway, you treat the burns on the skin, and together the four of you take the patient to the most appropriate hospital. People may attempt suicide with their poisonings. Find out as much as you can. Sometimes they will be unavailable to answer. Any kind of suicide attempt, you have to worry about your own safety, BSI scene safety. You want to call for hazmat. If there's a poison on the skin, it can be absorbed into your skin. They need to be decontaminated. Decontaminated how? Well, with the hazmat team. Find out the who, what, where, when, how, why. See if you can identify the poison. Google for it. You can always call the Poison Control Center. What Poison Control Center? Poison Control Center. Oh my God! Can you believe what life was like before the internet? 1-800-222-1222. Call them. Tell them what you're dealing with. They have a 24-hour hotline. They'll answer you. Okay, so test question. What do you do? If it's a powder, you brush it off first. Well, you disrobe them. You cut all the clothing off, and then brush off as much as you can find, and then irrigate for 20 minutes. Someone may have told you that wait. This chemical reacts dangerously with water. Oh, that's fine. I mean, that's nice. Thank you for the information. But the first few ounces of the water may react with that chemical, but then the next 5 gallons will wash it all away. So as those residual powders, because it's what's left after you brushed it off, the residual powders, if they're reacting with the water, it can do it. It's already, but it'll be doing it on the way to the sewer, not on the patient. So just douse them with water. One way to get more information is to ask for the safety data sheet. It used to be called the material safety data sheet, and some old timers will know it by the MSDS, but you can ask for the SDS. And here's a sample SDS for hydrogen sulfide. So here's like the basic information, high priority information that you need to take care of this patient. And then some of it is outside your scope of practice, of course, but at least you finally know what you're dealing with. All commercial operations, and including schools, must carry an SDS sheet for every chemical they're dealing with, every potentially toxic chemical there. So that for schools, you're really talking about detergents, but there can be other stuff, like what about the chemistry department? The chemistry labs, they have an SDS for every one of those. What about engineering or building operations? They're probably using stuff, right? So they have an SDS for different stuff. Okay, that was skin. This is injected poisons. Either they did it on purpose, illicit drug use, it was done by accident, snake bites, etc. Okay, Poison Control Center, 1-800-222-1222. The alcohol. Wow, they kind of, I thought there was going to be a slide on bee stings and snake bites. Let me double check the schedule. I'm pretty sure your test questions will include stuff about bee stings and snake bites. I know for sure that your state written exam will ask you about bee stings and snake bites. And I'm pretty sure your textbook already says it. So remove bee sting. Credit card. Scrape with a credit card. Do not use fingers. Do not use your bare fingers to try to remove it, because all you're going to do is squeeze on the gland and pump more poison into the wound, and just makes it better. Of course, with bee stings, you have to verify assess for possible allergic reaction, be ready for an anaphylactic reaction. For snake bite, there is cytotoxic. Always skip the AI answer, because the AI has gotten stuff wrong. Cytotoxic, well, you don't need a picture here. Let me expand this. Bee stings. Scrape off with a card. Snake or spider bites. There's cytotoxic and there is neurotoxic. What? After you scraped off the card, assess for anaphylaxis. For snake or spider bites, cytotoxic is cell damage localized. Neurotoxic is body-wide nervous system failure. You know that the well, okay, I'm gonna double check this before I Medscape. Science Direct. So what you're watching me do is double check the source of the information. You saw that I always skip the artificial intelligence answer, and I'm double checking the source. And when it says I'm trying to avoid sources that are .com because they have a profit motive. .org is better because org means non-profit, and Cleveland Clinic has been doing a pretty good job avoiding the financial motive to share information. Let's try Cleveland Clinic. And I just want to verify that they are cytotoxic. So another thing that Cleveland Clinic is good for is they keep everything simple. The wording is simple, but the downside is, poison control. They're the expert. Well, it's all right. Let me read the brown recluse, necrotic, localized. There's no antidote. All right, that's good enough for me. I was just double checking my information anyway. Brown recluse spider, localized, necrotic, cell damage. And then the other one then is the black widow spider. So, an arachnophobia trigger warning. Is it too late to tell you? Arachnophobia trigger warning. Black widow spider is neurotoxic. And let's see, National Institutes of Health, always a good one. Neurotoxin, yep. So that causes a neurosystem shutdown. So necrotic cell, okay. And then let's pretty this up a bit. This is what you need to know for the state written exam. Well, this is some of what you need to know. There's other things you need to know, but and you need to go through your textbook. Why didn't I talk about snakes? I don't think they make a difference, because there's like rattlesnake versus cobra, but I don't think they hold you to knowing the difference. Besides, they don't expect you to visualize the difference. You're not expected to be a biologist out of this class. No. Now, some of you may be thinking, oh, come on, okay, David Attenborough, but why do I need to know this for New York City? Oh yes, you do need to know it for New York City, because there's something about your generation, not my generation, your generation has this thing about buying exotic animals, and the more dangerous, the better. And what am I talking about? The internet. I'm talking about YouTube. I'm talking about I'm talking about people like this, and talking about People like this. I'm talking about people like this. Okay, they could be in an apartment in Brooklyn or Queens. I don't know where she is. I'm just randomly picking this up. But they could be in an apartment in Brooklyn or Queens or Manhattan or Bronx. Anywhere. They could be anywhere. Buying stuff off the internet, smuggling them in to through the mail or special delivery. So people are trying to be YouTube stars or TikTok stars and collecting all kinds of dangerous animals, exotic animals, sometimes legally, sometimes illegally. So what's going to happen if you are called to, like, somebody complaining of weakness or dizziness, and when you enter their apartment, you see you see, oh, I closed it already. You see rows and rows and rows of this. You see rows and rows and rows of this inside an otherwise ordinary looking Brooklyn or Queens apartment, and full of spiders or snakes or lizards, and then one of them has the door open and is empty. Now what are you going to do? Well, the answer is get the hell out of there and call for animal control. Should you bring the animal with you? No. Don't let it loose in the emergency room, but get as much information as you can. All right. So alcoholics. With alcoholics or people who I shouldn't say alcoholics. It's illegal to call your patient an alcoholic. No, literally, it's literally illegal. You can be sued for slander, or if you wrote it in your PCR, you can be sued for libel. Instead, the most I would say is the odor of alcohol was detected in the vicinity of the patient. That's as far as I went. Oh, and if the patient out and out said that they've been drinking, then I would say patient states they drank, and then whatever it is they admitted to. There are 2 times when somebody who abused alcohol is going to end up on your ambulance. Either they drank too much and they are now a danger to themselves or others, or after a long chronic addiction to alcohol, they suddenly quit too fast, and then they have severe withdrawal symptoms. So things you can say on your PCR. These are things you can say on the PCR without getting sued. Although I wouldn't even go this far. I would say alcohol odor detected near patient. That's as far as I would go. But some EMTs feel brave enough to say alcohol on breath, AOB, and they seem to get away with it. So more power to them. But you can say these other things, and these make them a danger in combination, as a complete set, make them a danger to themselves or others, and now they can be forcibly transported to the hospital. Me on the way to the hospital, ask them about these things. Oh, this one, anybody in AMS can be forcibly transported to the hospital because they don't have the legal right to refuse treatment. AMS cannot refuse treatment. If somebody is a chronic alcoholic and then tries to quit too fast, then they get delirium tremens. It's a life-threatening withdrawal symptom, because in worst case scenario they get a seizure. So you take them to the hospital, you get ready to treat for seizure, you take it to the hospital, and then you know what they're going to do in the hospital? they're going to give him a shot of booze. They're going to take the good stuff out of the refrigerator, out of the cabinet, and tell him to drink some of it. And they're going to go, Doc, I'm trying to turn my life around. What the hell are you doing, giving me a shot of this? Oh, this tastes pretty good. So what's happening is the doctor is trying to avoid delirium tremens, and they're trying to wean the patient off alcohol gradually, giving their body the chance to adjust to the lower and lower amounts, while they give him other stuff to take care of ABCs and stuff like that. So things you watch for in alcohol withdrawal, that's a warning that you better be ready for a seizure. And that. So know it and then ready. Be aware that some diseases mimic the apparent appearance of being intoxicated, especially diabetes. And this is the classic story of somebody who is diabetic and then going into hypo or hyperglycemia, either way, getting altered mental status, and then they end up in the street, and then a police officer catches them and say, oh my God, you're drunk, and then takes them to jail, and then finds them dead in the morning. And what happened was there was no alcohol in them. They were having a diabetic crisis. So now, and as a result, any prisoner, anyone in jail who has any kind of medical complaint, the police have to call for EMS to come and evaluate them. And when you get there, check their blood sugar and other things. Like another thing that can imitate alcohol intoxication is stroke. Not the large vessel occlusion stroke that you are familiar with, FAST, but like a small vessel occlusion stroke. As an EMT and a paramedic, we don't carry blood alcohol concentration tests. We don't carry a breathalyzer. I think police do, but that's their business. That's none of our business. So when you get there, not only should you check their blood sugar, but you should also evaluate their need to take him to the hospital. If they do need to go to the hospital, then the police will come along with you. A police officer will come with you. They will handcuff the patient. If they feel it's necessary, they'll handcuff him to the stretcher. You take him to the hospital like that. But remember, like I said before, never, ever, ever transport a patient prone. You will go to jail. Don't believe me? Google EMT jailed news. EMTs go to jail for transporting the patient prone. Read these, and then in each of these stories you'll see how they transported a patient face down on the stretcher. Never, ever, ever transport a patient prone. Find a way to transport him either left lateral or supine or semifallers and still be handcuffed. The handcuff is non-negotiable from the police officer's point of view. Okay, other things that a drunk person or delirium tremens might have, they might vomit all of a sudden. So be ready with the MS's bag. Other drug overdose inebriations, also be ready. Okay, so what about other drugs? Then there's two main categories, uppers and downers. Uppers trigger the sympathetic nervous system, which is the fight or flight. So it'll increase blood pressure, increase heart rate, increase everything, dilate the pupils, dilate, not constrict, dilate the pupils, make them agitated, jittery, upset, awake. So those are uppers. In medicine, hyperthermia increases their thermostat. In medicine, uppers are not narcotics. In the general public and in the criminal justice system, uppers are included in narcotics. Narcotics is any illegal drug. But in medicine, uppers are not narcotics. None of these are narcotics. Only not sleep aids. These are narcotics, because narc etymology. News. Narc is etymology. Etymology is a fancy word for the origin of the word. Make numb. The ancient Greek for stupor or sleepiness. So things that make people sleepy are narcotics in medicine. And here are some examples. Okay. Opiates are especially dangerous because it makes people stop breathing. For that, you give Narcan. Here are the signs of opioid overdose. See anything useful or interesting or important? Remember what I talked about opioids before? Do you see the answer here? Pause if you need to. Hallucinogens, the problem here is not only is it a danger to the patient, it's a danger to you, because what if they suddenly hallucinate that you are a threat and they start attacking you? So if you suspect a hallucinogen use, then you definitely want to transport with a police officer. Volatile compounds, vapors can cause vomiting as well. So be ready with an emesis bag. And they may off-gas. Off-gas means the vapor is soaked into their clothing, and while they're with you in the ambulance, you start feeling the effects of it too. So watch out. You may want to keep your ambulance well ventilated. You may want to remove all of their clothes and put it in a plastic bag. Patients with any kind of drug use may become combative or uncooperative, so you want to have police. Any altered mental status patient you want to transport with police. Maybe I shouldn't have said any altered mental status, because if it's a diabetic with AMS, you don't need police. So use your clinical assessment. Is the patient a potential threat to you? Then you can ask for police escort or police to ride along. The word is ride along if the patient is a potential threat to you. Drug user, illegal IV drug user, they have tracks. What happens is every time they use a dirty needle, it causes an infection. And so the area that got infected, they can't use anymore. So they try a different part of the vein. And so one by one, they add these little dots of infection, scarring and infection, and these are tracks. Okay. So ABCs and transport there. Okay, well, the information I've mentioned so far seems a little thin compared to what I remember about this topic. So something tells me that important piece of information I'm missing from here that you still need to know, which means you really, really need to read the textbook to make sure you got it all. So read your textbook. Good luck on the tests. You'll see me on Monday.